when I finished London Fashion Week, I texted you, didn't I? I said, I feel drunk.
Kids, you probably shouldn't take alcohol from strangers. Ultimately, it's not about a hierarchy of diversity or disability. And sometimes I feel like a bit of a fraud. Like, it was just a case of always feeling undone by my self-consciousness. And
I don't give a fuck because I know I look fantastic.
And I had broken skin on my head and the wig actually stuck to my head. Oh, damn you, alopecia.
Most of the general public aren't built for it. They're like, what the fuck is this?
And I remember my mum used to say, there will come a time where you don't let this hold you back. I have to tell myself, like, that's not me cheating on my bald self. Should I be grateful for male attention or female attention because I'm a bald woman?
I did it once. I did it once for a work thing when I was working in digital marketing and got verbally abused, which was fun.
I don't think one label would ever be enough. Ever.
Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Laura with us. Laura, did you want to quickly introduce yourself? Let everyone know who you are, what you do, and why you are on this podcast today.
You tell me. But I am Laura, otherwise known as Relight Alopecia, and I'm on this podcast to talk about living with a visible difference.
Love it. I'm really excited about this episode. We met at London Fashion Week, and Laura's just got an infectious energy about her, and I'm just hoping that it comes through in this episode. But yeah, I'm really excited. So first of all, how are you? How's everything going?
I am okay. I'm pretty shattered, actually. You know, it's you will relate to this. After London Fashion Week, which was the best day ever, but it was a long day, wasn't it?
Yes.
I feel like I'm still recovering, which I think people not in the chronic illness world will not really get that. But yeah.
I mean, I'm not classed as chronically ill, but it took me a while. Like, it just felt like I was.
I'm not sure I'm classed as chronically ill. I just have an autoimmune condition, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But I never know if I can put a label on me or not put a label on me. All I know is I refer to myself as an ill kid, and I feel bloody shattered, Charlie. That's all I know.
Look. If that's the way you want to identify it, let's just identify as that. But no, I completely agree. When I finished London Fashion Week, I texted you, didn't I? I said, I feel drunk. Like, I woke up and I was like, I feel so hungover, but I haven't had, I had, I think, one glass of fizz, but I think that was it.
I think I had 4 or 5.
Wow. I know, the worst thing was, I think I came out late because everyone wanted to see me with the crown. I came out late, everyone was like, I know I got there and everyone was like, oh, there's a little bit left, but
there was a set amount. There was definitely a set amount. I thought they'd put some aside for us models, you know, as being the talent and all that. But there was also a guy. I don't even know who this guy was. So, you know, kids, you probably shouldn't take alcohol from strangers. But he just had a bottle and he was going around like pouring up his friend's drinks. So I just kind of went on over and was like, hey.
I'll have some, thank you. Although I must admit, it was like, as much as it was amazing, it was such good fun. It was carnage. I've never seen that many people in one space, and like obviously you had quite a few wheelchair users there, people with sticks, walking aids, also. So like, oh my god, it was like trying to get around, especially at the end of the event. It was like, oh god, okay, how do I get through? Okay, can someone shout for me?
Yeah, it was a very, very packed room. But I guess that was good because we knew people were all there for the right reason.
But yes, like London Fashion Week, I feel like as well, it was such an amazing thing to be part of. Like, it was a proper goosebumps moment of, oh wow, like literally the most diverse catwalk you've ever seen. It was actually amazing. It was so nice. So it was so nice as well to like meet everyone and like actually connect with people.
I was going to say, I think the day itself, the 10 hours of lingering around and chatting, and I think I actually preferred that to the whole, 20 seconds of going down the runway.
Yeah. Yeah. Although the one thing I will say, and I never thought this would happen, is I got to about 3-4 o'clock and I think I just hit a wall, but it was the first time I'd felt like my social energy gone. Like I'd never experienced that before, because normally I'm one of those people. I'll chat and chat and chat and bounce off people. But I was like, I got to like 4 o'clock and I was like, I just want to go to bed. I don't want to do anything. I want to go to bed. But then obviously the adrenaline kicks in, the show starts up again, and then it all sort of went from there. But yeah, I did have an hour where I was like going to Gina, I really want a nap. I really want a nap.
I don't think you were the only person feeling that way, and it was very kind that you introduced me with my infectious energy, but that was very much a case of I was faking it a lot of the time as well. Fake it till you make it, like I kept telling myself, like, just keep talking, just keep push through it, it will be fine. Like, because
Yeah.
I'm one of those people, if I stop and sit down, then I'll stop,
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually me. I think I went. I think I'd sat down for like 5 minutes and was like, "Oh, okay. I'm more tired than I thought I was. Oh dear,
Yeah, that was a
that's not good."
mistake.
Yep. I, full disclosure: like, if you're in that situation, just keep going. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
Just keep going.
power through.
But yeah. Anyway, so tell us a bit more about your condition, how it affects you, sort of what a day to day looks like for you, and the challenges that you come up against.
Okay, so I have alopecia universalis, which basically means I don't have any hair on my body, no brows, no lashes. And so for many people that might just be seen as a kind of aesthetic issue, like, oh, it's just hair. But obviously, alopecia is an autoimmune. Not obviously, lots of people might not know this, because I think after the Oscars incident last year, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock for making the joke about alopecia, that brought the term into lots of people's lives.
Yeah.
And so people know alopecia. Oh God. Alopecia, no one can see that, but maybe they can see that. Yeah, this is, you do it with footage, don't you? Sorry, I've just realised that anything I do.
It's all good. It's all good. It adds to the comedic effect. Don't worry.
So for anybody who's not watching, Laura just hit her own face with her hoodie. Anyway, yeah, so the Oscars was obviously a big moment in terms of alopecia awareness, but I still think there needs to be a lot spoken about, because it's not just hair loss. For me, it's the kind of impact of the fact that when I was 13 years old, I started losing my hair. And as a 13-year-old girl, especially, having to deal with that change in my
Yeah.
appearance and not looking air quotes normal anymore changed the way my life went. And it really did. It changed the way people responded to me. It still to this day changes how society deals with me. And that's just for looking different, So
Yeah.
I found myself in a situation now where I'm really trying to celebrate and embrace my differences. And I'm meeting lots of different people with lots of different conditions. But ultimately, it's not about a hierarchy of diversity or disability, in the sense that it's just finding people that relate to each other and can say, yeah, my issue is
Yeah.
not my condition, it's how
Yeah.
society treats me.
Yeah. It's that social. It's the social model versus medical model, isn't it?
Exactly. So, sometimes I feel like a bit of a fraud, like taking part in the catwalk, because I'm like, well, I don't technically have accessibility needs, so should I be here? And it's like, well, I have been made to feel like I've never gone to makeup stores, when
Yeah.
girls would used to love to go as teenagers and get their makeup done in Debenhams or whatever. God, I'm showing my age. Debenhams doesn't even exist anymore. But obviously for me, I was wearing a wig, not wanting to talk about it. And so
Yeah.
that was my worst nightmare, like having someone look up close at my face and seeing that I'd terribly drawn my eyebrows on and I didn't have lashes. And it was just a case of always feeling undone by my self-consciousness, and I was just
Yeah.
all the time thinking about the fact that I was wearing a wig, and it was just a lot of energy worrying about how different I looked. And then even when I was trying to disguise it with wigs and makeup, worrying that people would notice. So
Yeah.
I'd say literally 2 decades of my life just spent worrying about the fact that I was a bald person rather than just living my life.
It's really interesting because I say it on several occasions. Obviously, our situations are very different, but I've spoken to several guests, and I always say it's always interesting to see their perspective in terms of when they got to a point where they accepted their condition and the impact that that had. And obviously, like whenever I say that, I always want to say to people, "Look, I'm saying that, but that isn't me saying, oh." Laura's accepted her condition. She never has a problem ever again. She's absolutely fine. What I'm saying is she's pretty much there 90% of the time. 10% of the time she's like, this is shit. I really don't like it. I'm really not happy about it. But it's
Mm.
really interesting to watch that journey because, as I say, that bit before you get to any level of acceptance is so hard because you constantly blaming other people, blaming society, blaming yourself, blaming this, blaming that. You're just basically looking for something to latch onto, and it's a
Mm.
really interesting thing to speak on. Speaking to several different guests and all saying, "Oh no, I had that. Like I had that bit of like, oh, I don't know where I fit in this weird and wonderful world, and I don't know what
Yeah,
to do
and that
next."
thing, I don't know if you've had that feeling or your other guests have of, I used to fantasize about what would I have been or what could I have been if that hadn't have happened to me when I was 13. If I'd have
Yeah,
continued being like everyone else and all my friends and all my peers, where would I be now? Would I be a sports star? Would I be a Hollywood actress? Like you just, all of a
yeah,
sudden it's like everything is tied up with the fact that I don't have hair. And I'm like, oh, if only, if only, if only. And I think for me, the biggest shift was stopping and thinking, no, enough. Like,
yeah,
it's more than hair in the sense that it did completely shape who I am, and gave me a lot of issues. And also there is the health implication of having an autoimmune condition like alopecia. It basically means my hair follicles have been attacked by my immune system like they're like the flu or something. But I
mm,
also have eczema and asthma very severely, which are both autoimmune. So the combination of dealing with very sore eczema, especially when wearing a wig every day, there
yeah,
were there were practical issues of being a wig wearer. Like, I know it's gross, but I always talk about how my first ever trip to America, and I think I had my wig on for like 48 hours because of the flights and everything, and I just refused to be seen without it or take it off. And I had broken skin on my head, and the wig actually stuck to my head,
ooh,
and I had to
ouch,
pull it off and rip open the cuts. Like, that's what I would put myself through rather than just not wear a wig. Whereas now I'm
yeah.
like, I cannot believe I put myself in that much physical discomfort for other people's social comfort.
Yeah, that's really interesting because obviously when I met you, I did meet you with a wig, and like I did. So I was going to ask what's your experience been of wearing a wig, and what has that been like?
So, like I said, I was 13 when I started losing my hair, and it was just patches at that point. But it spread pretty quickly. Like, it's alopecia areata is how it starts, with little circle patches, and then they kind of start joining up. Um,
Mm,
and I stopped going to school for 6 months because I couldn't disguise it anymore, and I didn't want to go to
yeah,
school because I was scared of what the kids would say. Um, so yeah, when I finally decided after 2 terms of year 9 that it was time to go back in year 10, I went back wearing beanies and head coverings and stuff. But I lasted about a week because teachers kept asking me to take my hat off, even though they were meant to be briefed on my difference and like what I needed to feel okay. There were just so many different scenarios where every day I was having to self advocate and explain why I was
yeah,
wearing
yeah,
this hat or whatever it was. So in the end, I called my mum and said, after a school trip, when I'd been asked to remove my hat yet again in front of other kids, and I felt I couldn't say no. And so I said, I think it's time I get a wig now. And she was like, oh, I've been waiting for you to ask. And I thought, hang on a second, I didn't know that. I don't know. I've not done this
yeah,
before. I've never been bald. I didn't realise that I was meant to ask for a wig. But we've talked about it since, and she explained she was so scared to be the one to suggest it was time for me to get a wig because, my hair looked so pathetic.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, so from the age of 14, I shaved what was remaining of my hair, which was pretty freaking traumatic.
I bet.
And then put a wig on, and then literally wore a wig until the pandemic. and never talked about it or would be seen without it.
Wow, that's like, what a story. And then I'm just dumbfounded because I'm like, I know where you're at now, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah,
that's
you've met me coming in,
yeah,
grabbing the microphone off the Kurt Geiger social media person and being like, I'll
yeah,
do all your interviews. And
yeah. I was like, when you're explaining that, I'm like, whoa, that is a journey and a half. Fucking hell, wow, wow. Okay, yeah, that's really that's amazing. I mean, that just shows as well the progress. Like, the progress you've made is amazing, and that's what I love. Is I love hearing those stories of, yes, I went through this phase that was really shitty, and yes, I'm still working on myself and still getting there. But look where I am now, and I think it's always nice. Like, I'll do situations like this, and someone will go, "Oh wow, like you've got all the way here," and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I have. Like, I didn't even think about it. Because for you, it's your norm. You've
yeah.
traveled that journey, and for you, it's been very gradual. Whereas someone like me coming into the situation, I'm like, whoa, that's a big jump. That is a big
Well, yeah,
jump.
I think it's because I thought in my head that I'm never going to be one of those people that feels happy about the fact I have alopecia. This isn't, I'm going to have to accept that my hair's not coming back now. And maybe I even got to that point after like 5 years, I stopped hoping. But I've got to be honest, all through my teenage years, I had elements of regrowth and then falling out. And alopecia is really cruel in the sense that you think it's coming back, and then I would lose an eyebrow and then it would grow back, and then I'd lose my lashes. And to this day, I still go through phases where I have lashes for 4 months and then they suddenly fall out again one morning. It's really cruel
Yeah,
because you acclimatize to dealing with certain levels, but like losing the hair on your face, not only is it really frustrating because it's hard to disguise, in terms of looking different, but your eyelashes and your brows and your nose hair, they're on our face to do something. They keep dust out of your eye, like,
yeah, yeah,
so I'm old streamy face over here on a windy day, like terrified,
yeah.
holding onto my wig with one hand, eyes and nose streaming on the other. It's just, yeah, there were so many things I was just like, oh, damn you, alopecia. And I thought, well, my goal's never going to be to be bald in public. That's not my goal. And I remember my mum used to say, there will come a time where you don't let this hold you back. And I was like, don't tell me how to deal with my alopecia, mum, like proper stroppy teenager
Yeah, yeah,
moment. But
yeah,
she was right. I think what she meant about it is not about the fact that I have proven to anyone that now, because I can be bald in public, that I'm okay with it. It's about the fact that I wasn't doing that before because I was actually terrified to. And I just kept telling myself that's not what I want to do. But it wasn't. It's because I physically felt like I couldn't do it.
yeah. It's getting comfortable. I'd imagine it's like getting comfortable in your own skin and getting to that stage of like, do you know what? I'm happy with this now, so I'm now happy to not even share it with the world. Just fuck it and do what I want to do. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the place where you want to be. I mean, I'm just curious. Forgive me if it's too personal, but also I can imagine going through school and that journey, dating and things like that, and that whole journey must have been quite difficult and challenging, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was fucking horrible. It still is.
Mm,
Well, I mean, it'll be
yeah,
easier now because I'm very out there on social media in the sense
yeah,
that if someone wants to stalk me, they'll pretty much soon realize, oh, she's bald, whereas before
yeah.
it was a big secret and I would go into relationships holding this big secret and like I would wait, I'd flirt with them, we'd do dates, whatever. I remember like one of my boyfriends being like, oh, I really love your hair. And me just being like, oh, cringe, cringe,
Oh,
cringe, but not
oh,
saying anything. I just
yeah,
couldn't bring myself to. That's how terrified I was because I thought it would be a deal breaker. And actually, I had nightmares about boyfriends like seeing me without my hair or having to tell them. And now I'm just like, I'm never going to put myself through that again. I mean, easier said than done because
yeah.
I'm very much single at the moment. Very well, it's quite recent again, but I am ready to be single. But I think now I'm just like, well, at least yeah, I might meet someone when I'd be wearing a wig, although I can't imagine that right now because I go out a lot not wearing a wig. But
Mm,
when I do wear a wig, I tend to just talk about my alopecia non-stop anyway. So like it wouldn't be the same kind of secret. And yeah, it was exhausting. And I know that relationships, when you have a visible difference, is a big challenge for lots of people that I've spoken to. So I think letting go of that kind of shame and that energy of keeping that secret was probably the best part of this journey of confidence.
Yeah, because it means that you can be. Well, I'd imagine for me it was like you could be your authentic self. It's that whole like everyone asks me, I don't know why, but every wheelchair user or person with a similar condition to me goes to me, "Do you put your disability in your dating bio?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's like one of the trickiest questions to answer because." On the one hand, it might, if you leave it out, it might get your foot in the door and then you can like bring it in later and then they're not bothered by it and then you've introduced them to disability, which they wouldn't have before. But then on the other hand, I sit and go, why should you hide yourself? You should just be you. And if you just happen to be in a wheelchair or have a visible difference, then all the cards are on the table.
It is so tricky, and I'm fascinated by it, especially using dating apps, which I did for like 2 weeks, and then I was like, this is awful. I want to get off of here. I'd rather be single, thank you. I'm not saying I'll never go back on them, but it's just I'm not in the space at the moment where I'm just not fussed. Like I'm pretty busy, you know. I'm doing podcasts. I've got stuff to do with my evenings. But it's interesting because with my visible difference, I can put a wig on and makeup on and disguise it. With your disability, you can choose to have your wheelchair in a photo or not, you know. So it's interesting, isn't it? How, and I've spoken to people before who basically said they would specifically choose photos to present themselves as non-disabled. That was something that gave them confidence, and it's really interesting. Like I still think, like I was just going to say, I think like when I put a wig on, sometimes I think, oh, I look really pretty there. God forbid that I could be a girl that would actually say that about myself, because it's really rebellious to actually just like how you look. God forbid. But I have to tell myself, like, that's not me cheating on my bald self. Like, it's okay to put a wig on and be like, oh, well, I like that. I think that looks good. It doesn't mean I'm saying that's a better version of me, but it's really hard to undo, like, generations of society telling women that being long, luscious haired is, you know, more
the
attractive.
way forward. It's I mean, I'm gonna ask a really naive question, and forgive me if it is like something that you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, Charlie, I thought you were better than this. But do you have different do you have different colors? I just was intrigued because everyone asked me, do you have different colored wheelchairs? And I'm like, I would love to, however, I don't have that much money.
Cost. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, really. People always joke about, oh, well, when you're bald, at least you don't have to pay for the hairdressers. It's like, do you know how much wigs are? I used to save up every 2 years to buy a $3,500 wig because I wanted to have a human hair wig. Like, that's because crazy. That for me was what I needed to feel like I needed the most realistic wig. And looking back, it wasn't even realistic, you know? But yeah, now I definitely have more fun because I've discovered the joy of synthetic wigs. So basically like plastic, but actually they come pre-styled, pre-colored, and I've got all the colors of the rainbow.
Yeah, that's pretty. That is pretty cool. Like, as much as it's a pain in the ass to have to deal with that, that is pretty cool to just be like, do you know what, I fancy this today.
Yeah, it's weird. I just need to. I'm so. Like, I haven't worn a wig yet in my new workplace because now it's like I've set the bar and I went in with headwear. I've gone in bald a couple of times. I can't imagine wearing a wig now because I think that would almost confuse people. I don't like, or they wouldn't recognize me, or
yeah. I mean, I'd be intrigued. I'd like if you do eventually do it, I'd love to know the reaction because I think if I saw, because I only know you without a wig, and I think if I saw you with a wig, it'd throw me completely. I'd be like, oh wait, that is Laura.
Well, and I don't know how I feel about the fact that sometimes people say like wearing different wigs is like it brings out a different side of your character. And I get that because, like, if say you've got all your makeup done, you're wearing a bright red, like I've got like a 1940s style one that I've done a photo in, like obviously that exudes glamour. But then it's like, I know it's still me underneath it all. Like, it's always still me. But like when I did the Trini takeover show, Trini Woodhall was very much like, it's like two different versions of you. And I didn't know how I felt about that because, like, I always want to be me, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think as well. I think it's that whole thing that you bring. It's like putting on I'd imagine it's like putting on an outfit that you're really proud of, like those outfits that you're like, oh, this hits. But then it also just gives you that like upper level of confidence that you're like, I don't give a fuck because I know I look fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've got a super posh wedding to go to this summer. I've no idea what I'm going to wear yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'll probably, depending on how hot it is, want to wear a wig to complete my outfit, like to look. But maybe my goal might be if I get too hot, rather than like in the years gone by when I've been sweating my ass off on the dance floor under a wig, terrified it's going to slip off. Now, maybe I'll be at a point where I can choose to whip it off and just freak everyone out on the
I'd love that.
floor.
I would love to see it. Oh, especially like if someone doesn't know, I just want to watch the sheer shock. Just about, wait, what? Wait, what just happened?
Okay, maybe if I do it, I'll get my friend ready to like capture the audience reaction.
I just think it'd be such a it would just be interesting. So because it's that whole thing of like people don't see it. People don't see it often. Like I can't think of time that I've seen that many people with alopecia. So like when people aren't exposed to something, it shocks them. Like even like to me, with someone like me from the disability space, like I think it's the difference is when you're having the whole staring at someone because they've got a disability. I feel like when you've got a condition yourself, there's that whole thing of, oh, I haven't seen this before, but there's that kind of mutual. I'm not looking to be a weirdo. I'm just curious to see what's going on here, and then there's that awkward smile to be like, no, I'm part. Like, I am part of the community, and I get that I'm being that guy right now, but I don't mean anything by it.
It is really tricky, isn't it? Because I think staring is rude when it's like hostile staring. You know the difference between a stare and a look, and I think, it's when there's malice in it, like rather than just like genuine, like I want to learn more about your experience. But it's tricky because even in like I can spot a mile off if someone's wearing a wig. Of course I can, because like you say, I'm aware that a young woman or man might be wearing a wig, so I'm just kind of like I'm just ready for it. But I've noticed before, like I was at a friend's wedding and a woman I didn't know, quite a young woman, was definitely wearing a wig. But obviously I didn't want to point it out to her because even though I wanted to have a moment of that little secret nod or a little cap of the wig, you know,
Yeah.
But I didn't know what position she was at in her journey. Would she feel okay with that, or would she feel mortified that I'd noticed she was wearing a wig? So I chose not to, and I'm really glad I did, because then actually when I was speaking to our mutual friend later, she was like, oh yeah, no, she doesn't talk about it. She's really not comfortable with it. And it broke my heart, but I thought, it's not the right time at a wedding when she's enjoying herself for me to be like, hey, do you want to talk about your alopecia?
I think it's hard because I've had it before. I've met someone in a wheelchair that's quite like nervous, quite shy, and you really want to go up to them and go, dude, like, it's gonna be okay. Like, well, don't worry, look at me. I can do it. You can do this. But then you also don't, like I say, it's that finding that time to do it. I love having those moments where you're almost able to mentor someone through the journey to help them speed up their journey a little bit and get them through the shitty bit. But it's timing that is a skill.
They have to be ready. They have to be ready, don't they?
Yeah.
So, but social media, I don't know about you, but for me, you know, we talked about those nearly 2 decades of me literally not wanting to talk about my alopecia, never being seen, you know. So I'm sitting here right now bald and my blinders up and it's dark outside, so all my neighbors can look in and look at me bald right now. Literally probably a year ago, I would still be uncomfortable with that, and I hadn't even thought about it ahead of chatting with you today. Like, it's those things that when I stop and think, I'm like, okay, that for me is the true sign that my confidence is progressing and that I really am embracing my visible difference, you know? But social media has been the thing that's really sped up my journey in the last 2 years and connecting with a community online, 100%.
yeah, seeing people like you in similar situations, like there's almost that relatability. Like even meeting people like yourself who've got completely different conditions, like there is almost like a level of understanding, even though we don't understand. Like we don't
Yeah.
understand that personal journey that you've been through, but we understand that having any sort of visible difference, any change that's different to the social norm, is a pain in the ass. It's a pain in the ass, and most of the general public aren't built for it. They're like, "What the
Mm.
fuck is this?"
How do we respond to you? Like, so I don't know, do you find it's sympathy is one that I get a lot, both
Yeah,
because at
yeah,
first for me, when you're a bald woman, they'll assume that you're going through, they assume I'm ill. Lots of people assume I'm ill. And so I get sympathy for that. But then even once I say to them, oh no, I'm not going through chemotherapy. I have alopecia. I have done since I was 13 years old. It literally means I don't have hair, but I'm perfectly happy and healthy. Not always entirely accurate, because like I said, actually quite a few autoimmune
yeah,
comorbidities going
yeah,
on, but can't
yeah,
be asked to
yeah,
get into that with a stranger.
yeah,
But then sometimes they're still like, oh yes, alopecia, and like tilt
yeah,
their head on the side. And I'm like, come on, I've just told you I'm happy and healthy.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's weird. Like people are like, "Oh, what happened to you?" And I'm like, um. I stopped breathing at four
existed.
weeks old, and then this happened. But then also, like for me, it's the weirdest one is relationships. Like obviously, you met my partner Gina, and like
Your
often with her,
PA.
yeah, my PA in several aspects of the word.
Oh,
uh, she won't mind me saying that. Oh, clearly, Laura's not been exposed to my very dark and weird sense of humour.
well, and clearly I have a filthy mind. What's wrong with me? Like,
Don't worry, that was where I intended on that going. Don't
good.
worry.
Okay, well,
Um,
poor Gina, but yeah.
but yeah, so like Gina will often get it that like she's like, oh, people come up to her and go, oh, like well done you, and thank you for like taking on the poor disabled boy, and it's like, wait, what? Wait, what? What? I'm not doing like lifelong service. Must look after
Wow.
disabled people. Like
And
it's
well, and I know
just
you said
strange.
before, and I spoke to you a bit about it on the catwalk day, but like, people always assume that Gina is your carer or like paid support rather than in a
Yeah,
relationship with you. And
yeah,
it is just baffling. But to be honest, that ableism is internalized sometimes as well. I don't know about you, but I have felt at times like I need to settle, or should I be grateful for male attention or female attention because I'm a bald woman? Like, should I just
yeah,
take what I can
yeah,
get? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's
and
hard.
it's
It's like
awful.
that. Yeah, because it's almost like you don't know when is next gonna come, and you're like, oh wait, is this? And also you don't know if they're like if it's just what I hate is there's like when I was dating, it was like that. Is it a sympathy thing? Like you want to stroke my ego to make me feel a little bit better, or is this an actual thing? Or it's a very confusing time to
Mm,
like be dealing with it because you're like, is this normal? Are you being nice? Like you actively being nice like a normal person, or you being oh poor disabled person? I'll make him feel a little bit better by telling him he's dressed really nicely today.
mm. Yeah,
It's a weird one.
it's fucked up that we have all these extra layers of insecurities to think about, and it's not even through choice necessarily. It's because things like the dating apps obviously are split second decisions. And I don't know, like I feel like a hypocrite because sometimes I'm like, but you have to question yourself. Like, we all go for things that, oh yeah, it's, I don't know where I'm going with this, in just the
No,
sense
it's
that
weird.
it
It's
really,
weird. Yeah, it's really weird. It's like I always used to joke with my mates when we were in school because they'd all be like, "Oh, like you could like treat yourself to a one night stand," and I'm like, "Oh my god, that would be so complicated." Could you imagine? I need to like almost give the girl a manual to be like, "Here's what I can do. Here's what I can't do. This is me." It just didn't work. But then that's the worst thing is
yeah.
like for me, I always joked and said I almost need to train the person before I date the person, and I hated that because I was like, that's a wrong way to do it. We should be getting to know each other at the same time. But then I've kind of
Mm,
fast tracked that to make sure that they're comfortable with my condition, and that isn't going to
mm.
be a barrier for But yeah, it's a really, really weird situation to be in.
Yeah. Could talk about that all day, Charlie, but we won't. But
It is. It's such a weird one. But actually, coming to a point you mentioned earlier about like labels, how so you identify as person with a visible difference. How do you feel about the whole disabled community when it comes to different labels? And obviously, there's a lot. Particularly from my point of view, I often worry that because we're getting so into the labels and what we call each other, oftentimes that can put off the wider community and educate themselves about the condition because they're almost scared of getting it wrong, which I can understand to a certain extent, because if you've got an individual that is not as comfortable discussing their condition and going through that education process with someone, because we don't all have to be educators. But then I always feel like the label thing is a bit of a weird one. So I was intrigued to get your perspective to see where you stand. I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That was a long question, but I completely get
Sorry.
why, because it is a minefield. So in some senses, I think labels are really powerful because it's something that helps build a sense of community. So I refer to the hair loss community or the visible difference community. And I should say the label of visible difference is actually a term that's relatively new to me, but something that I found really empowering to actually explain and connect with other people, that it's not just hair loss, but someone with a birthmark or burns or any kind of visible
Yeah.
difference. And it's actually allowed me to broaden my community beyond hair loss using that term. But I totally see where you're coming from. How often, if you don't fit neatly in a labeled box, society don't know what to do with you, but also sometimes you
Yeah.
can feel you slip through the net. So, for instance, the Disability Expo is coming up. And I've had a few friends, because I'm friends with lots of people within the disabled community, asking me, are you going to be attending? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't think I should I? It's not for me. And it was only when I started chatting, they were like, of course it's for you. Of course you can come. Why wouldn't you
Yeah.
come? Like, everyone that's going. It's a chance for us just to have a fun weekend. Like, you're an ally, or, it doesn't matter. Like, and also,
Yeah.
I'm neurodivergent. I was diagnosed in October. So technically that's a disability. So
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
get too bogged down into what you are and what you aren't, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, are my needs being met by society? No, not
Yeah.
always. Have these conditions impacted my ability to live the life I want? Yes, they have. Yes, they have greatly. Are there things
Mm.
that I can do to make that better? Yes, there are. But are there things society could be doing to make my life easier? 100%. So I completely get where you're coming from. I don't personally refer to myself as disabled, and I think I would be worried that I would offend people, or people would just be like, get the hell out, love, if I was doing that. But then I know other people that have ADHD that do consider themselves
Mm.
disabled and would use that label. So it's tricky because also we don't ever neatly fit into one box. We're all
No.
intersectional with all these different conditions we have, and personality types, or protected characteristics, visible differences. Like, we're all just such a weird mix of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think one label would ever be enough, ever.
No, it's really hard, and it's like almost. Do we have like? It's almost that whole thing of like feeling disabled enough. It's like the one thing I
Mm.
hate is like I've been stuck in situations before with other disabled people, and they're like, "Oh, but I have spasms. I have this. I have that." I'm like, "Why are we disability jousting?" No, guess what? It all sucks. They're like,
Yeah.
why are we sitting there going, "Oh, I've got this. I do this." So
Well, and also there might be a person that presents somehow by some weird, twisted fuck of fate that they have the exact same, which you could never prove, presenting in the exact same way their condition, but their mindset and their personality could be so different that
mm,
they manage it or deal with it in a completely different way. So I don't, it's too simplistic, isn't it? To be like,
yeah,
well, we have the same experience, because you don't have the same
yeah,
experience, whatever it
it's
is.
it's like often with physical disabilities, like you've got someone like me I've been disabled since I was like 4 weeks old, so I don't know any difference. People come up to me all the
Mm.
time like, "What's it like to be in a wheelchair?" I'm like, "What's it like to walk?"
Yeah.
I really don't. But then you've got someone that's been in an accident, and because of their accident has meant that they are now a wheelchair user. Their journey is very different and a lot.
Yeah.
I'd almost argue a lot more traumatic, because like
Yes, I could.
for me, I woke up and I'm like, yeah, this is it. Like, okay, I'm in a wheelchair. I don't know any different. This is how I put my shoes on. This is how I do daily tasks. Whereas someone's got to completely rewire the way they live their life, and it's such
Mm.
a different journey.
And I think it must be the trauma, I reckon, really comes with seeing the change again in how
Mm,
society responds and how suddenly you either become invisible or a problem.
yeah.
And I'm sorry if that's putting massive words into, but as in even losing my hair and seeing how I was treated in the healthcare system as something like, oh, well, we don't know how to fix this. So, like jog on, kind of like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah.
and it must be really difficult because, like I say, I think about the level of confidence I had before I looked different. Um, and yeah, and it's the same whether it's visible difference or disability. The fact that any of us, so all these people that go around thinking, oh, well, I don't have those issues. That's not something I understand or have to deal with. I don't know anyone in my life that has a disability or has a visible difference. So all these, people whining on, it's like barely anyone. It's like, well, there's 1 in 5 people that have a visible difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the statistic is. You could probably educate me here, Charlie, on like, let's say
I'm actually not 100% sure. I think it's about 1 in 4.
but
I
that's the
want to say.
thing. And then if you think about it as well, like 1 in 2 of us are now going to get cancer in our lifetime, which will then have long term implications potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So none of us are going to go through life with a perfect bill of health. And not that that
Yeah.
makes us better than anyone else anyway, but I think people are just inherently selfish. And until they have to deal with something, they just put it out of their mind's eye and they just don't think about it. And I get that to an extent, but it's like, but at the end of the day, if you're refusing to do simple things that could then help so many people, those 1 in 5 people or whatever, to live their life to their best, when this is completely out of their control. The fact that I'm a bald woman is out of my control. The fact that
Mm.
you stopped breathing at 4 weeks old was out of your control.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
why
Yeah.
should you be punished for the rest of your life?
I mean, it's exactly like I've had a guest pointing out, and I was like, "Oh my god, that is so true." Like people, she said, people are a lot more likely to end up like us than they are us like them. Because like
Yes.
you could develop a disease, get hit by a car, this, that, the other, which would all lead to you being some form of disabled, visibly different. Whereas it's unlikely that one of us is going to get some eureka moment and be like, "Oh wow, all of my problems are gone. I am now an able-bodied human being." It's
Hmm.
it's not so like, and also I always joke and say, at least if when I get old, I'm going to be pro at this shit because I've been a wheelchair user since I was like 4, whereas Deirdre getting into a wheelchair for the first time in 80 years. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. Yeah,
It
it is
is.
really
It's.
interesting to think about how, as a increasingly aging population as well, so much type of disability and being disabled by society is going to happen for lots of
I think the
people, like you say.
interesting thing with that is I'm tackling it with a family member at the moment of, as we touched on earlier, it's very different to someone who has become less able or has become ill later in life for them to accept it. And I find it really hard. So, like, she won't mind me saying, my nan at the moment's having mobility issues. Perfectly fine, but trying to persuade her to get into a wheelchair is like flipping. Oh, it's just like I just can't. I can't get through to her, and I hate it because it's like you've had a grandson for 24 years who's a wheelchair user. Come on, you can do this. And
Yeah.
it is, but like you say, it's that whole thing of, oh, we're getting older and older and having more and more health complications, and the more I think as well, the more we can raise awareness for the support and the things out there for the community, the more it's less daunting. Because I'm like, if if, for example, I'm mid-40s and something happens, but then I'm like, oh, actually, there is a whole community online that I can reach out to be like, this has happened. What the fuck do I do next?
Yeah, and I've got to admit, as someone who goes out a fair bit, even in like our capital city of London, and seeing how much like planning has to go in to just getting about the city, that for me has been one of the biggest eye openers of making me think, well, no wonder somebody with mobility issues might not want to embrace the freedom a wheelchair would give her, like your nan, because actually it doesn't feel like freedom when you look at how difficult things are. All these cars parked up on the pavement, like it just blows my
Yeah,
mind. And I'm sorry,
yeah.
because obviously I'm preaching to somebody who has to
No,
experience this every day. You
no,
don't get a day off. And I'm just like, oh
it's
my God.
it's a hard one because I think I've obviously there's been so many things that have come out recently that have helped us and made our lives easier. Like, for example, I've worked quite a lot with the passenger assistance app for booking train support and stuff. That has been game changing because it means I don't have to deal with someone on the other end of the phone. I can literally press a button.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are steps in the right direction. It's obviously as well. I've got to the point now where I've been like this, as I say, grown up like this, so I know what to do and how to tackle those different situations. But yeah, it is. It's a lot to take in. You almost need, and that's why I do love what I do with social media. I love to be able to go, look, you're new to this, but let me give you a crash course because it took me years to get here, and I don't want you to take you years. And that's why I love
Yeah,
doing stuff on social media because it's like, oh wait, no, this support does exist. It's just not well publicized, and that's the biggest
exactly.
issue I think. And to come to your point of like, I don't. So originally, when I left school, way back when, oh my god, that is like 6 years ago. Wow. Okay, that's quite scary.
Charlie, if you dare make a joke about being old to me, who is 32 in 3 weeks' time, I swear to God. I
I
swear
wasn't
to
going to make
God.
a joke of being old. What I was going to say was I came out fresh out of school wanting to be a digital marketer. I was well keen and like as everyone else at my age wanted to be. But the problem was everyone going to me, go work in London. That's where the big money is. That's where the big marketing firms are. Try getting to London. That's the challenge. And also the fear of dealing with trains every day and them
Yeah.
not running correctly.
Especially in
And you go,
commute time. I can't even
yeah,
imagine.
I,
Yeah.
I did it once. I did it once for a work thing when I was working in digital marketing and got verbally abused, which was fun. Yeah, yeah, it was a whole thing.
What,
I
by an
was
arsehole in a
amazed.
suit?
Yeah, basically, I don't even know how their thought process worked with this, but they were having a go because the guy was getting the ramp out for me, saying, "Why did I get special treatment?" And I was like, it's not really special treatment; it's just getting me off the train." Um, but yeah,
Wow.
so
Yeah, you have to wonder
yeah,
how. Yeah, anyway, I can't even. That's like, well, I'd say that's their problem, but it's not because then you had to deal with their stream of awful consciousness. Yeah.
it was just you just sit there thinking, what is going through? Yeah, I mean, it didn't help at the time that I wasn't in the best headspace that I am now. So obviously, it had more of an impact back then than it
Mm.
would have now because I
But that's
probably
the
would have
thing.
just
People don't
laughed.
know. People don't know
Yeah.
what you're dealing with. People don't know how your day is going. Like I always say, one day I can go out bald and be like, it's going to be fine, whatever. I'm going to not even think about it. I'm just doing my thing. And then another day, I could just be having a really rotten confidence day, like every person can have. And then
Mm,
one comment or one weird look or one question or one assumption could literally make me want to go home and just be like, no, I can't.
yeah.
So people's people really do have a big impact, and it's not us being a snowflake generation because we're not even part of the same generation, Charlie, because I'm old and haggard. 10 years this year since I graduated university, which is mental, although they have actually just invited me back to go to one of their graduation ceremonies,
Ooh, check you
which is
out.
awesome. I know, and hilarious, but yeah, whatever. Clearly they think I'm inspirational.
Oh, inspiration porn. But the best thing is I'm very conflicted with that whole thing because I do sit there and go, if I'm, like, yeah, inspiration porn sucks because like we're not doing anything special. But then also, if I could use it, I'm gonna fucking use it. Like, why not?
Yeah. And also, I know what you're saying. It's like, well, so I studied film and literature. I'm not working in that industry, so surely they should invite, which I'm sure they have, lots of people working in that industry. But actually, what we are doing is special in the sense that it's not about the fact that you have a disability. It's not about the fact that I don't have any hair. It's the fact that we're prepared to put ourselves out there. And like, so the campaigning I'm doing with charities at the moment, I literally went to 4 different events in the space of 3 days last weekend, and then I wonder why I got a sickness bug, and was not well this whole week. It's because we're putting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's that whole. I mean, I always say like people underestimate how much social media and being that having that presence can take up. I think it is like I think it's really interesting as well for people like yourself and me holding down quote unquote normal jobs and doing this on the side. It's like,
uh-huh.
whoa, okay, actually, you guys spend ages doing stuff, don't you? And I'm like, yeah. And then my team at work are like, why are you so tired? And I'm like, don't even go
Because
there.
every evening we're doing a podcast or we're speaking to someone or we're on a Zoom meeting. So like whenever I try and tell my friends, they're like, oh, do you want to go to the cinema tonight? I'm like, oh, I can't. I've got a Zoom meeting at 7:30. They're like, what do you mean a Zoom meeting? Are we still in the pandemic? Who are you Zooming? And I'm like, people.
Yep. Making moves. That's what I'm doing. I'm making moves.
I'm raising that alopecia awareness. What are you doing watching
Yeah.
terrible films?
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing something. It is. It's. I can't remember how we got onto this. How did we get onto this? But yeah, it's that whole thing as well of just putting yourself out there and doing something different. And I think as well, it's nice to see people appreciate what you do. And that sounds really bad, but I love it when I get a message from like a parent or whatever going, "Oh my god, like I'm so glad I found your page. Like I've just had a kid with cerebral palsy. I thought his life was going to be really challenging, and yes, it is going to be challenging, but at least I'm able to go, oh, but he can still do all the shit that I do. You've just got to be able to support him through the struggles that I went through. And I was very lucky when I grew up. It was very much a case of, yeah, Charlie's got cerebral palsy, but we're not going to treat him any different. So then that rubbed off on me in terms of I still travel, still go here, go there, work, do this, do that. And that's what I love. I love those little moments of, oh, you've actually helped me. And that
Yeah,
makes it
and
all
it's not
worth it, I
that's
think.
not bad. I don't think that means you're not doing it for the recognition. You're doing it because you want to make a difference and you want to know that I'm assuming all these things because it's basically the reason that I started chronicling everything on Instagram because selfishly, it was for me to set myself challenges so I could embrace my alopecia more, say yes to going to a theme park. And the only way I was going to do that was be like, right, everybody, I'm putting it on my Instagram, therefore I have to do it. I can't chicken out because it's going to happen, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And yeah, when a parent messages saying, I don't know what to do, my little girl is losing her hair. I don't know whether to, and I have lots of these messages, and it's a dual thing because it feels like a lot of responsibility because once you
Yeah.
start putting yourself out there, I think people assume that you have the answers sometimes. And obviously I'm speaking on behalf of my own experience. I'm not a medical
Yeah.
professional, obviously, but also I can't tell you how your daughter's going to react when you bring up the conversation of a wig with her because I don't know, and she might feel
Yeah.
very differently about it. But of course it feels positive to know when you embracing who you are sets a good example because I don't know about you, but I didn't have that when I was growing up. I
No.
couldn't see anyone in the media that was
No.
living with alopecia because Gail Porter lost her hair the year after me, and she went on to be really important for me. But the way that her story was covered in the news and like when Britney Spears shaved her head and stuff, like it was really negative and horrible. So it still wasn't positive representation for me.
Yeah. I completely agree, and it's for me as well. It's that whole thing of just seeing someone in a wheelchair living a normal life in terms
Yeah.
of going on holiday, going out with friends, trying the whole dating scene, doing working and doing. I didn't know what was awaiting me, and like I'm so glad that now I am able to go to someone. Look, getting a job with someone with a disability is really challenging. But here is some of the advice that I've picked up along the way to try and speed up your process. And that's what I love to be able to give back, because that is like going through those challenges means that I'm able to help someone else. But so for me, it's just that whole thing of being that person to say, look, just because you've got a disability doesn't mean your life's over. You can do all this shit. You just got to do it a different way.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's why I love what I do. But coming on to, I'm going to hit you with the last question, because I'm very conscious that you've got another meeting to get to, so I don't want to drag on too much.
Got to do that hustle, you know.
Yeah, you know, she's a hard lady to get a hold of. Like, oh yeah, literally.
Yeah, if only all these things were paid. Unfortunately, they're out of the goodness of my heart a lot of the time.
No.
But no, I'm teasing, because actually it's really positive for me. This is really, yeah, I love having conversations like this.
Don't worry. Honestly, I get the same thing. I do sit there and go, the amount of work we put in, it's like when you sit there and go, this is all out of the goodness of my own heart. On the one hand, I'm a really, I love it, and I wouldn't change anything for the world, and like I don't have to be paid for it, but it was always nice if it is paid for.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to sponsor the podcast, email me and we'll sort something out. But yeah, the one question I ask every guest at the end of every episode is, what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with? It doesn't have to be disability or difference related. It can be something completely random. It's just something that you feel really passionate about.
See, it's tricky though, because you say political correctness, which makes me think like I'm meant to have an unpopular. Is it an unpopular opinion? But basically,
basically.
Okay, well, an unpopular opinion. Love Island is a piece of crap, and I'm never going to watch it, and have never watched it. Soz.
Completely agree. I'm right there with you. I completely agree. I don't get the hype. I don't get the fun. It just makes my brain hurt.
No, and don't get me wrong. Like, I watch some absolute trash reality TV, but that is just one that I can't. I don't know. It's next level for me. Yeah. I just can't. But I don't judge people for doing that. I find it really annoying when there's something that's really in vogue. I mean, it's fascinating. Like, you know, when something is such a media moment or part of popular culture that, like, you can't. The thing that bugs me is when you can't have a conversation with someone once this thing happens. So I used to have it with Game of Thrones. I've never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. I know it's meant to be amazing. I know I love it, but I can't commit to however many hours of my life now. I just can't. And I'm not saying I never will. I'm open-minded. But I used to find with my friends, if GOT even got mentioned, that would be the conversation for me, done. I would just be sitting in the corner while they all went off and started talking about dragons, and I would just be like, I don't understand how you're so obsessed with this thing.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. It's that whole thing, like, I'll listen to... Like, the worst thing is, like, for example, my sister and Gina watch Love Island while they're working. They'll have it on the background. But then they sit there moaning about it. I'm like, just turn it off. You don't have to watch it. It's fine. Like, no one's got a gun to your head. You can just, boop, turn it off. Like, I just don't get it. Or, like, put something else on. And also, like, I think as well, people that are that obsessive with shows in terms of, this is all we're going to talk about, you guys are boring. Really boring.
Yeah.
Like,
what is that quote when they say, what is it? Like, something like, this sounds really harsh, but like, unintelligent people talk about other people.
Yeah.
Like, insightful people talk about ideas. Like,
yeah, it's like that whole thing of you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it still terrifies me to this day, because I do sit there and go, my group of friends are bloody crazy. So God knows what's going to happen to me. But yeah, it is that whole thing of, like, let's talk. I love getting down to the nitty gritty. Like, I love getting into a conversation where time literally disappears, because, like, we're down a rabbit hole now. We're just staying here.
Well, that would definitely be one of my things as well. The political correctness of having to do small talk. I can't abide small talk, and I really struggle with it. I would much rather you ask me like a big question as your opening question if I've just met you than like, oh, you know, what do you do for a living? Do you like the colour blue? Do you have a cat? I don't know. Whatever small. I can't even do small talk. I don't even know like.
Yeah, but that's why I love this podcast. It's like speed dating with your friends. It's like, right, let's just dive into it and see what we relate on and what we don't. Like with me, it's always funny because it's always very like, I don't know why, I've said this on a lot of podcasts. It's always, so how do you have sex in the bedroom? And I'm like, why is this the place that your brain goes to? Like, I don't understand. I really
Because
don't like.
people want to ask things like that all the time to each other. Like, people are weird. We want to know like the nitty gritty stuff, and I guess in a space like this, it's like you've basically said no holds barred. Like, you know, you can ask what you want. But I do find it weird that people think when they're asking you about your health that they think they can ask you about your sex life. I do, like, because you wouldn't do that to someone else. So I always find that quite strange. Yeah.
I mean, it's weird because like, obviously I've done content surrounding my love life and every bit in between. But it's more like when you're in a pub and like you've met Joe Blogs for the first time. You're just sitting there quietly having your drinks, chatting to some friends. Someone's like, "So, what happened to you?" And then the third question is, "So, like, how does it work with you two?" And I'm like, "Oh, for fuck's sake! Seriously, we go okay." Yeah, this is how it works. And it's like a whole thing of like, I don't mind it because I'm very open. I'm very open. I'll chat about anything. And I believe the more I can educate people, the better. But then also I'm like, buy me a drink first and get to know me a little bit before you're like, right.
Before I share my sordid sex life with you, buy me a drink.
But buy me a drink, loosen me up a little bit before you start throwing in the hole. Yeah, so how does this work?
Oh God, yeah, no, it's bizarre.
The other one that's my favourite is the whole, so wow, you're out with friends, you're having fun. And I'm like,
I
yes.
was until you just said that to me, you bastard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, we're not werewolves. We shouldn't be locked away. But I completely agree. We should do on that note though, like obviously I've just moaned about getting down to the nitty gritty and going for the big questions, but I do completely agree. I'm so done with like, so it's like a big one with with blokes. It's like, oh, did you see the Chelsea game the other day? And I'm like, as much as I am a Chelsea fan and I do like talking about football, I'm like, why do we always like, the strength of it is, yes, I saw the score. It was a good game. Great. Let's move on.
But it's clearly like a shorthand, isn't it? Like football chat is a shorthand. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah.
But yeah, it is. But yeah, no, I completely agree. But yes, I always give my guests a chance to plug themselves, let people know what they're working on, what they're doing, where people can find them, and just the sort of general tell us what you're up to finish off with the podcast.
I don't know what I'm up to the moment. I feel very busy, but I couldn't really tell you what. I feel like I'm doing lots of chats like this. And then I don't know how quick your turnaround is, but like I've just had one that came out today, but I recorded it like 2 months ago because it's quite a big one. I'm suddenly noticing a lot of activity on my Instagram, which is at Relight Alopecia. Plug. I'm trying to talk a lot about media representation at the moment. That's like my real focus. So I had a meeting last week in a room full of BBC commissioners, actually, which was terrifying, but really, really positive. And that was part of my campaigning work with Changing Faces and just trying to get visible difference onto the agenda in terms of how they're thinking about when they're ticking boxes, because let's be honest, a lot of the time it feels like it is a tick box exercise. You need to make sure you're capturing different things like how many people with a visible difference are you representing, and if they're not measuring it, how can we know? So that's been a real big focus, and just lots of things like that I'm going to at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like, I'm definitely going to ask how you got yourself in the room after the episode. But anyway, it's been absolutely amazing chatting to you. And I feel like I could chat to you for hours. So if you're more than happy to, I'd love to have you on for an episode 2. But thank you so much for being an amazing guest and just being an open book. So thank you so much.
Thank you.